you like to watch Survivor and slog through the nadir, then season 40's awesomeness will make you wanna cheer. We're all just so excited to watch these winners play, but we're still lazy, so this podcast comes out on Friday. John will make some dumb jokes, and he likes to yell and scream, but now we're watching 20 winners play, and it feels like a dream. We'll spend the whole time freaking out and judging the best move, and anything that Tony does, you know that we'll approve. It's the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. Winners at War!
Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I am John. My co-host is Andy. This week we are talking Survivor Winners at War, Episode 12, where we finally did end up getting the Tony versus Kim battle that I both wanted and feared. And now we must mourn the loss of Survivor goddess Kim Spradlin, voted out of Survivor for the very first time. Andy, please console me in my moment of need.
At least it wasn't Tony?
I'm feeling better already. Thanks.
I'm good at this. That's what I'm here for. Therapist,
grief counselor,
confidant. That's who I am. Just buck up, and here we are again. Tony. Hey, what'd you think of the episode? Besides, obviously, the sad outcome at the end.
I mean, this was the war that I wanted, right? But also didn't want. This is Winners at War, and this is one of those wars that I wanted to see while also desperately not wanting to see.
Like a European power realizing that wanting to go to World War I was maybe not the best idea. Sometimes there are costs to these things.
It sounded like a good idea until the first shots were fired. So it was one of those things where I was like, all right, I need to see how this is going to play out. And at the same time, like, shit, can't this please, like, let them both be immune so just the first volleys can be a proxy war and someone that's not one of those two will get taken out. And we got really close. I was very hopeful at that immunity challenge because I was like, oh, 2 immunity necklaces. This could work out. And Kim was hanging in there. It could have been both of them immune. Alas, they had to go head to head, and one of them was immune for that.
Yeah, although ultimately I think it works out for the best, depending obviously what your best interests were. For some people it'd be like, no, I wanted Kim to win and now she's gone, so that could not be the best. But I don't know if Tony would have been able to take out anybody other than Kim or Jeremy. And I think taking out Jeremy would have been really bad for Tony. So, if your interest is in the success of either of them, I think one of them had to go.
I am also at that point, which is why I was fine with it. And I do agree with you that once Jeremy is gone, that presents a problem for Tony. And I said last week, I think it made Jeremy more appealing to Tony once he realized exactly how many people would get on board with voting out Jeremy. He might have been like, hey, wait a minute. That's a useful thing to have around. I'd like to keep him. This is the second week in a row of him being like, no, I will move heaven and earth. Jeremy needs to stay.
Yeah, and obviously this week he had the greater motivation of learning that they were wanting to go after him. So that makes Jeremy even more important because he's not one of they. I just all in all, I understand the frustration of losing Kim. For me, it ended up being like one of those things that I've been talking about throughout the season. Once it became nut cutting time, I was like, yep, Kim, you got to go. You're going after Tony, and that's my main interest now. If you're not Tony, you're expendable.
Yeah, they were my number 1 and 2. And, now it's like, well, all right, I guess Denise, you're sliding into that number 2 slide now.
A lot of it is because, and we're going to get into this more, success for Tony looks a whole lot more feasible than did success for Kim. So that's another part of it is I've already kind of resigned myself that this Kim Spradlin wasn't winning this season.
Yeah.
So her winning this battle probably does me no good. That probably helps somebody that I care less about winning this thing do so. Whereas now, I have incredible investment. So for me, it was, man, this is such a great season. It really is.
And I think also just, obviously we don't get big into the edit reading, but it feels like narratively there is a arc where Tony rides this thing out. And it seems wild to think that he could actually, navigate very difficult waters to get to the final tribal council. But at the same time, there are some narrative suggestions that it could happen. And I remember in Cagayan, people were like, well, yeah, but obviously Tony can't win because the show is telling you no. And we were like, I feel like the show is very much telling you this is a man that's going to go to the end of the game despite his crazy gameplay. I feel like maybe that's the story we're getting again, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
I'm sorry to burst your bubble on that one, but if you recall, just last week I put him in the 0% club. So
oh, shit. I was, well, there goes. That's it. My hopes are crushed. No one has ever overcome such a, curse. I would say curses, but, this week did lead me to believe that curses may no longer be a thing.
Or maybe they really are and they cannot be avoided. You know what? It's impossible for us to talk about this episode in, generalities when clearly what we want to do is talk about Tony. So let's talk about Tony.
Tony has done it again.
Man, it feels good. Tony is still doing Tony things.
Oh, it was such a highlight reel. I love when he catches Ben trying to hide the idol.
Oh, that was so fantastic.
Immediately, it was like, Ben, what the hell are you doing? Like, I was standing right here. I saw you. And he's imitating him doing it. Like, oh, I'm going to hide the idol. And Ben's like, I was just, it's his instinct. And then Tony,
you're making me not trust you now, Ben. What? How am I supposed to trust you when you're trying to do this in front of me?
And then Ben comes back and is like, well, wait a minute. I can't trust you. You didn't even vote with me at the last tribal council. So he's like,
oh man, why you gotta be talking about old stuff?
That was hours in the past. Come on. Why are you still living in the past? And then scene ends with Ben carrying Tony off. Oh, it's so nice to have him back.
Ben, who, and we're going to talk about this, but has been, more and more, grumbly and, unlikable as it progresses. But this is the magic of Tony. You get a scene with Tony and you're fun again. That's the beauty of it.
And that's why I said earlier in the season, like, Sarah, I never felt during Game Changers was all that interesting. Sarah, when paired with Tony in this season, there was the scene earlier on where I was like, holy shit. This is fun. Tony's like the accelerant.
They were spitting on dust, on ash to put it on her face.
And so that's what I'm saying is Tony amplifies these other people. And, sometimes it works out really well for entertainment purposes. It's made Sarah a much more enjoyable presence on my TV screen. Ben, I'm enjoying his interactions with Tony. And even just like a couple weeks ago with Tony's interaction with Ben where Ben was saying like, oh, I heard you throw my name out. And Tony's like, no. Just the intensity of the Tony experience really like livens up any scene that we have.
And one thing, and we will continue to talk about what just an amazing gift of television Tony Vlachos is. But I do believe that it overshadows the fact that he is amazing. How did he do this? All we kept getting all episode, and frankly have been getting for like 3 episodes in a row now, maybe, including this one, is Ben does not want anything to do with Jeremy. Ben wants to get rid of Jeremy. He won't even talk to Jeremy. And somehow he gets Ben to not vote for Jeremy. How? Like, for me, this might be more impressive than what he pulled off last week. And last week it was looking like one of the greatest moves of all time.
Yeah, I'd still probably put last week's a little ahead of this because you can at least see some self-interest for Ben in doing this. Admittedly, it's a little thin because...
Oh, no, I think it's completely. I think Ben wasn't thinking. He was just being like, oh, no, it's got to be this. It's like, no, if we do this, they will have control of the game. So, yeah, no, I mean... Clearly he got Ben to see the light, but how?
Yeah, because Jeremy certainly could not get Ben to see the light.
No!
He was very much trying, like, hey, can we just talk at all? No. Like, Ben shuts down, goes all HHH, gruff Ben. I'm only going to get to the end with immunity idols because no one will talk to me and I hate everything. And yeah, Jeremy just could not get in there. Meanwhile, Tony is busting Ben's balls and gets carried off through the jungle with him.
Yeah, no, and look, this is another thing. Like, yeah, so I think you'll even get people who will acknowledge that, you know, the wild man Tony can do a lot of stuff in Survivor. Maybe even some people, not even maybe, definitely people who will credit him as like a tactical master. You know, like Tony can do things that no or few other players can. But what you don't get enough of, because people have codified this term to define basically players I like, is talk about his social game. And, you know, so people who won't credit Tony of being really good in the social game will ignore the fact that he got a guy who was so dead set against this one player that he wouldn't even just like talk with him like as a human. He got him to team up with him to do what Tony wanted to do. That is social gaming. Ben, you know, 1 second trying to hide an idol, the next second carrying him around the jungle, and then a day later telling him that people are moving against him. That's social gaming. And I know for some people, social game only means, I define this as players who don't do the big flashy moves, as a way of showing my refined taste and superior intellect when it comes to being a fan of Survivor. But no, Tony has a fantastic social game. Look at what he did with Sarah.
And also, I enjoyed Tony's scene with Nick, where Nick he confronts Nick basically after being told by Ben that the other side was trying to move against him. And Nick is dodgy as shit, looking everywhere but Tony's eyes, and it's like, stammering, can't think of what he's gonna say. And, you know, there are certain types of survivors, like Boston Rob, for instance, who, had they received that sort of a response from Nick, would be like, okay, so Nick needs to go right now because I can no longer trust Nick. Tony's like, nah, bigger priorities, I'm gonna do other things, Nick doesn't have enough power. Like, the strategic plus the social combination is what makes me enjoy him so much. And I think it presents a lot of times as this like manic, wild, unpredictable force. And then you like take the bird's eye view of it and you're like, oh shit, no, all these pieces line up. These things that he's doing actually make sense. Like he might have actually sat down and thought his way through this. And this is a rational plan to go forward with.
Yeah, I mean, it's still manic and unpredictable.
Sure.
And that's the strength of it. But no, yeah, he is not just doing stuff to do stuff. I mean, sometimes I think climbing the tree, that's just stuff to do stuff, and God bless you for it. But no, like, it was completely logical. Kim is trying to make a move against you. If you get rid of Jeremy, there's not going to be many obstacles to prevent her from doing so because, you know, she already apparently had numbers. One of the people who probably wasn't in on that, the person that Tony just finished saving, was Jeremy. So I can't do that right now. And so, yeah, no, there's always thoughts through his actions. He knows that Nick is lying to him in that moment, but he lets it slide. And then at the end of the episode, for whatever reason, we don't know, Nick voted the way Tony wanted. Tony was able to completely move this vote around, and it wasn't through idol manipulation. It wasn't through crazy backstabs. It wasn't even through like last second, you know, do this now or you have no time to do it. It was through working his relationships with people to the point where Sarah just takes it for his word and trusts that she is safe and, you know, tells him not to play the idol. Like that is the level of, you know, gamesmanship that he was able to do. And it was largely social. Now it was highly strategic too. It's almost as though like a good Survivor player has, you know, all of those things. And man, who has it more than the guy who also has won his third immunity in a row?
Unreal. Yeah, immunity king Tony. And that's another thing too. I think that when he gets immunity, it just unleashes Tony to allow him to try bigger, bolder, braver things that I don't know that he necessarily would try if he wasn't immune.
I mean, it's true because like he never really tried big, bold, and brave things his first season when he never won immunity. So this is you might be onto something here.
In those cases, he had immunity idols that he
you go, a very powerful one at that.
Yes, very willing to play. I did enjoy though him like openly offering to Sarah, like, "Hey, if you don't feel comfortable, I will play this idol on you. Like, I am confident, but if you are not, I got your back. This is how I'm proving to you that we're still team after that opening scene of this episode where you chewed my ass out. We're good. It's been a day and a half later, 2 days later, whatever it is. We're good now, right?" And yeah, Sarah, to her credit, is like, no. Keep the idol. We're good. I believe you. I'm safe.
Jeremy believed him enough to not play the coin, and we'll get to that too. But yeah, no, that's...
Jeremy also told him about the coin,
yes,
which he didn't even have to do,
no,
but he did.
So, maybe Tony has a bit of a social game. And yeah, and while we're here, because yeah, I do want to talk about, the scenes with Sarah and what that portends and all that. Real quick, RIP to the old idea that Tony needs a Trish to put out all his fires in order to succeed at Survivor. That was a fun take. It had a good run, but it's kind of looking like garbage right now, which is almost what I always kind of believed it to be. Because he had no Trish. I know some people might argue that Sarah's his Trish. I don't know that Sarah helped him put out the fire with Sarah. I kind of feel like that might have been him.
I don't know that Sarah was pouring water on herself. So I do enjoy their partnership, though. It is like, actually, you know what? We'll get to the partnership later because we do have to talk about Sarah at some point. So let's move on to other topics.
I'm not done talking about Tony. What do you mean other topics? Are we talking about other topics tonight?
I'm saying other Tony-related topics.
So, yeah, and about the move with Sarah, yeah, I think it's a great social move. I'm willing to do this to preserve our relationship. And, like, the Sarah relationship is one of import to him. He needs people like her in order to keep going forward in the game. He needs Tony-level threats, and I believe she's near that, right? Yep. She's been talked about that by the people that were looking to move on Tony. So, and I also think what else it helps is everybody now knows he has an idol, and he knows that they know they have an idol. Track that sentence, but you probably know where I'm going. Makes it harder to get him. Not impossible, but you got to be really ready to do it. Like, a vote split, a 5-2-2 vote split. Well, we already know what Tony does with vote splits, so it's like you got to be really bold now to go after Tony with the very next vote, because everybody knows that they not only have to beat him, but they also got to beat an idol.
And not only that, but even in this episode, Ben came running to snitch to him. Mm-hmm. Jeremy might come running to snitch to him. I don't know that I think Jeremy's less likely to, but it's possible. Just, some loyalty there. Nick might have been, like, cajoled into, trying to re-earn Tony's trust later on by going back to snitch to him. Like, your options to split a vote to blindside Tony get really, really narrow. Like, maybe Sarah's ready to turn on him, but even then, you still need a lot of votes to be able to split it.
Well, you need somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So, in order to now, or the very next vote, to go against Tony, you need everybody to go against him besides Tony and the person you're splitting votes on. That's going to be a tough road to haul, because also to do that, you need to be ready to, outsmart him, like be ready, fool him at all times. You're not waking up earlier than him. You're not going to have more energy than he does. Like, are you sure that he's never going to get wind of this and then play the idol? And you have the ultimate security to split the vote without him? By including Ben, by including Jeremy, like, that's tough.
It is. And you have to know, too, that people on your side might be willing to go along with that. Someone like Michele or someone like Nick might go along with it. But if you're, the Denise or the Jeremy who's worried that, like, oh, shit, if I go along with this, who is Tony most interested in taking out if I do that? He's probably not going after the Michele or the Nick. It's the bigger names, the bigger targets. So it's like, shit, I don't know if I want to stage this move right now.
Yeah, and this is why, like, taking out Kim was, such a great idea. And obviously, the greatest idea is Ben comes to you and says, Kim's trying to get you out. Like, that's
right.
But if you look at, like, what needs to happen to take Tony out, at least, like, at 7, and every boat he gets a little closer makes it easier because, again, he has an idol. He took out in succession the 2 most likely players to be like, no, it doesn't matter. We're doing it. We're going after Tony. The 2 most people likely proactive, strategic players. And now what's left? There's not a lot of, proactive players that are going to make the move on it. The ones that are most proactive of the ones that are left are most closely tied to him. It's Sarah. It's Jeremy who, has ample evidence that people want to take him out. So why would he want to work with them? So now you need to, like, whip this extremely complicated vote amongst Denise, Michele, Nick, Ben, who's the 5th in that? Or Jeremy. And again, I don't think are you gonna trust Jeremy to be the person? Can Jeremy trust anybody that's like, oh yeah, we're voting for Tony, and not believe they're actually voting for you? And I say this as somebody who has the utmost of respect for Denise, but I don't know if she's ever led a vote in her entire Survivor career, other than the ones where, like, her vote was the only one, right?
I think the issue with Denise is, again, that, I liked her trying to scheme with Nick and Michele, because if she gets to the end with that trio, good for her. She's probably winning this season. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you need more than just that to go against Tony right now. And like I said, you have to very carefully pick your pieces and how you're going to do it. And I don't know that she's going to be the one that can get it there.
Yeah, it requires a level of aggression that's not in her wheelhouse. That's not her game, right? So I think, like, it definitely was in Kim's game. We saw her do it this episode. We'll talk about that. I think it's in Sophie's, Sophie, the one who's like, us 5 over there talk. Oh yeah, she'd be bold enough to go for it. But this group, I don't know. I mean, like, Nick sometimes, but is this group letting Nick suddenly be the leader? I don't think so. Ben, has he ever rallied troops? Like Tony has positioned himself really well. And a lot, what happens, we saw it in Cagayan, we're seeing it now, is once it starts to become a Tony game, that's a really uncomfortable place for a lot of players. And yeah, people say it feels chaotic, and absolutely it is chaotic. The safest place to be right now is Tony's first vote when an episode starts, because he will change things up. Because I don't know, again, because he's a mad genius, or it's because he recognizes things change and he needs to be ready to change with them. But how many players in the history of Survivor, much less the players that are left, are built to play on that level of chaos, to play on Tony's level?
Well, I think it's sort of what I said a couple weeks ago, where the Cagayan game was more about Tony always being in a position that if you wanted to move against him, it was too dangerous because there were other threats that would then be left and you might lose to. So you need Tony in some way. And it's the same thing here. Like, you need to pull in a Jeremy, a Ben, a Sarah, whoever it is, to move against Tony. And then, like, shit, is that taking too much risk? Are they actually going to be willing to do that? Because they might need Tony. He positions himself in a way that he's shielded on either side. Both sides will need him, and thus will do, if next week, for reasons unknown, he goes up to Denise and Michele and Nick and is like, listen, the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, going to move on Jeremy. They'd be like, okay, because we have to do something like that is better than us getting voted out. He positions very well, and it's amazing that it's been allowed to happen. Part of it is, though, that he's gotten immunity, which has helped a lot.
It's a helpful thing. I mean, it's meant that he's reduced his, threat, or he's failed to manage his threat level, and thus he's not really particularly good at Survivor. But still, it's a thing in the game, and if you can do it, that's great. Especially if a bunch of other people are not doing it, like willingly giving up the chance to win immunity. And yeah, like it's an aggressive, hard pushing game, especially at this time of the season. Like, not a lot of people want to play like that. They want to find some equilibrium. They're more comfortable setting the plan and sticking to it. Tony doesn't care. He doesn't care if it's his plan. He'll change it if he decides in this next moment, no, this new idea is much more important for my continued success. And I gotta say, I feel like each time he's right. And I just don't know how many people are willing to play at that level or are capable of it, because I'd say in this episode, we got to see one of the greatest Survivor players of all time. Someone many people will consider the greatest Survivor player of all time was not able to play at that level. And I'm talking about Kim.
And it's amazing because it starts off the episode. Kim obviously has the right read. You do need to move on Tony. Like, this is the time, which is why I was saying last week, like, I don't want to see it happen, but at the same time, it needs to happen. Like, if you wait too much longer, it's too risky. Do it now.
And also, it isn't really a battle without, like game pieces,
right?
You
need troops.
If it's just a final five, it's like, well, it's me or you, whoever wins immunity or something. That's not what we're looking for.
Right, exactly. I don't want to see an immunity battle between them. I want to see them go at each other. And so Kim correctly realizes, like, shit, we need to gather up enough votes to get out Tony. This is too dangerous. We can't let him keep going. She gets the people on board. I mean, obviously we'd never get that put to the test, but I'm fairly confident most of those people were legitimately willing to vote for Tony. And then, oops, plan goes wrong. Tony wins immunity. And this is where the contrast comes into play, because I think Kim did not adapt to that scenario as quickly as someone like Tony does. Like, Tony in that scenario would be like, oh shit, there goes my primary target. Here's what we're doing instead. An hour later, and has moved the votes all around. Kim could not manage that.
Yeah, now, I will call into question how much she had people in line, because if she truly had all of the people that she talked to willing to take out Tony, does Ben spoil the conversation? Now, granted, he did it after the immunity was won, so there's enough confusion. But if it's a pause on this plan, we'll get Tony next time. I don't know why you tell anybody if you're that Ben. If that's the plan and you're Nick, do you step off? All you need to do is outlast this guy. Now, again, we can get into why we think people stepped off in the immunity challenge, and maybe it's simply as he was about to lose anyway. But, there certainly wasn't like a deep motivation of like, we got to keep Tony from winning that you usually get when everybody has really narrowed their focus on a target. So there's some doubt. It could go, I would say she had a pretty strong core of votes to move against Tony. She had enough that, if Tony hadn't won, it could have been interesting to see if it played out. Where I think it went wrong, and I agree, that she wasn't able to pivot well. Her pivot was, all right, we'll surrender. I'll get rid of somebody that I kind of wanted to work with anyway. And that's not the same as, okay, what's my next advantageous move? Which would be, like Sarah or something.
So that was the interesting thing to me, because, and this gets into Sarah's game, but fuck it, we'll have some overlap here. Kim, the right move, I think, once Tony got immune, was to be like, well, shit, go after Tony's, if Tony's 1A, Sarah's 1B, go after her instead. And I think she didn't want to do that because she felt like she could still work with Sarah. I don't think that gives Tony the same amount of pause. Like, I think Tony just is like, fuck it, I'm going to take the shot, and then we'll pick up the pieces after the vote. And I think that's probably what she needed to do here. Yeah.
No, so that's the post game. But even pregame, I think going after Tony, right after he had won this won the vote, the vote prior, required a level of finesse that she wasn't exhibiting, which is weird because she was all about finesse in her first season, right? I think she put it too far out there that absolutely this is Tony, lock, stop, we're doing it before you even know who is immune and who isn't, before she knows whether he has an idol or not, which is why maybe she needs to go get like more than 5 people, or at the very least, make Jeremy believe that there's an alternate target so there's a vote split that way. I think she was a little too straightforward with her attack on Tony. And I guess what happens is because Tony had stepped up the aggression, the vote before, she thought she was in the clear. She thought she had already made her game preserving move of flipping to the majority, and he pulled that rug right out from under her. And for a player who I think has all game been waiting and trying to find a foothold, that was it. And then she's like, screw it. Tony is the most dangerous player in the game. 100% correct. I'm going after him. And if it costs me, whatever, which is an attitude I fully respect.
Hell
We're
yes.
going to get into that. But I think it just shows it's like, now you're playing Tony's game. And that's not her game, you know? What makes great fights is styles. Right? A clash of styles. And she was never able to make this a Kim style fight. It was a Tony style fight. And Tony won.
And it's disappointing, but at the same time, like, respect the effort, man. Like, she had been targeted early on. And like you said, it really didn't feel like until just maybe, last week, she finally was in a position where it's like, oh shit, we might see Kim actually start playing. Like, she is in a position where she can move some pieces, do some things. She might be freed up, and immediately it's gone. Like, at the moment she can grasp any kind of power, it's gone. And we never get to like relive the Kim experience of her dominant style of game. And it's disappointing. And yet it was beaten by another entertaining, dominant style of game. So I'll take it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, I love her moving against Tony. I just think it required, before people knew where the chess pieces were, a little more subtlety of just like undercutting him, right? Like, not going say, we need to get rid of him, but like, man, what do you guys think of Tony? Like, how can we even trust him? That sort of thing. So that when it's time, then you go after that move. Because I think what we've seen a lot this season, and, it's understandable that the players in the action that are dealing with this every few days aren't seeing this pattern necessarily. A plan set early isn't really much of a plan at all. It's like whatever the last plan is. So I feel like, and we saw that with Tony twice now. Tony is great at this. This is where he lives, man. It's just coming the last plan, talking to somebody last. And then, apparently they're still figuring it out at tribal council. So I feel like that was a move that probably works, and it probably worked in her first season, right? They were able to set out boot lists and ideas beforehand, right? And every once in a while, some fucker named Troy will win a challenge and think that he's done it all. I've disrupted all the plans. We're like, okay, next.
Yeah, we just move 1A to 1B, and then next week you're back to 1A.
Yeah, this isn't that kind of season. And I think, and again, I get what she's doing. It is the right thing to do. I just think that she herself didn't execute it with the proper amount of finesse.
And like I said, I think the thing that she lacked was the ability to adapt after that plan fell apart, which was disappointing because it doesn't diminish her game in any way. She's still a fucking Survivor legend. But at the same time, it's like, damn, I wanted the best of Kim to go against the best of Tony. And I do think this was not the best of Kim.
It's tough to come in with a reputation. And you can say, well, Tony has, but Tony had that buffer. The last time people saw Tony, he was exposed to a certain degree, right?
Yep.
It was Game Changers Tony. So he comes in now and just acts differently. And they're all like, well, maybe he isn't quite what we thought. I mean, last time he wasn't. Yeah, he's been humbled. He's acting like it. So that's all that's happened since Kim played Survivor is basically anybody who's been on the Survivor internet calling her the greatest player of all time. So it's a tough way to play.
I mean, it is Boston Rob had the same sort of issue. Like, who the fuck is going to take Boston Rob to the end with them? I'm amazed that Kim lasted as long as she did. When she was targeted in that very first episode, I was like, well, this does make sense. She's really good. I get why people would want her gone.
Yeah, and these players didn't forget it. Sarah never forgot that Kim was a dangerous player. She was angling to get rid of her 2 votes ago. Tony, who, isn't somebody who is a super fan of seasons that don't feature Tony. We know for a fact that he was keyed on to Kim because he talked about how Kim Sprodlin was one of the best players of all time, I hear. So he knew, Michele is, a big fan of Survivor. She knows. So people knew. And that makes it tougher to operate right in the front. And you could say that her operating the way she did is being able to really clearly call out Tony and get people over might have also been enough to make all these players be like, oh no, this is Kim doing the Kim things. We got to be, look out for Kim, to the degree that maybe, that's what turned the tide with Ben and Nick being like, yeah, no, actually I do see your point. As dangerous as Jeremy is, we can't let Kim take control of this game.
And they didn't.
There you go.
She's gone. Play the mournful music.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if anything this season has diminished anybody's, placement. It's just kind of the way it's gone, to the degree that once you eliminate like the Wendell Adam blips, swap on, it's been a chronological order of boots. From Boston Rob to Parvati to Yule to back to Tyson, Sophie, Kim. And I think that's kind of what the terms of conditions are, is like, people that I watched play Survivor before I played Survivor, so, people I watched as a fan, those are the ones I'm worried about, So after, you play Survivor, suddenly, everybody's a peer. Anybody who plays after you, you're like, I've been through what they are. They're eating where I used to poop. That's like, they're not as threatening. But anybody you watch beforehand, it's like, ooh, I remember then, back when I just used to watch Survivor. And that is a pattern that's going down. So watch out, Denise.
Oh, how dare you put that out into the universe?
It's just math. It literally has been. Who's the longest term survivor? That person's next.
Final destination
one person
scenario going on here.
Yeah, so one person who is not a long-term survivor that not many people watched play before they did is Michele.
Yeah.
What did we think of her moves this episode?
Oh. So I made the mistake of engaging with some of the Michele fandom. And so the argument, because my argument was roughly this: what the fuck is wrong with Michele? Why can't she do anything? And the response was, Michele is keeping her options open because she's going to vote for Jeremy, but she's giving him the coin. And then, she can work with Kim afterwards. She can work with Jeremy afterwards. Depending on who gets voted out, doesn't matter. What the fuck options are you keeping open at this point? There are 7 people left. People will come to you out of necessity because there aren't enough fucking people left in the game to be picky. Pick a side, Michele. Do something. Try and fail, or try and succeed. Just try. Don't sit there and it's fucking maddening. And then the moving of the goalposts to where, no, actually, Michelle's got this galaxy brain move going on, and you don't understand. It's got levels and blah, blah. No, she's just not doing shit, and it's maddening to watch.
Yeah, it must be so nice for Michele. And yeah, I get she's one of the people that gets also a lot of heat, so that part's not nice. But the bar is set so low for her among her supporters, among the people who love her. The bar is set so low that they can come out of an episode where she gives away an advantage and votes with the minority, and they can still be like, oh man, that was an impressive move. God, you think so low of your supposed champion that even that'd be like, bravo, bravo, as though, she's a little kid trying to sing, and this is what I want the listeners to do. Close your eyes. Yeah, I mean, not if you're driving. Here's just a scenario. I want you to imagine, devoid of names, imagine a scenario where a player in an episode gave an advantage that they spent all their fire tokens on to protect an ally that they were voting for because they were otherwise powerless to save them, only to see that ally saved by other people without even using the advantage, thereby leaving that player voting with the minority. Now, and this is like some Matthew McConaughey time to kill type shit, I want you to pretend that this move was done by someone who you haven't dedicated yourself towards defending at all costs. Would you still view that player's performance as good? Imagine it was Nick who did all of these moves. Would you be all like, oh man, what a brilliant move. He's keeping his options open. There's nothing else he could have possibly done in this scenario. Or would you be clowning him? Because this is the definition of failure, and people are still out here like, oh my god, she's such a queen. Why do you think so low of the people you cheer for?
And what is the thing that the Michele stans always tell you about her? She's a social queen, right? Queen of the fucking social game. She is the champion of the social game.
You meet her for 5 minutes and you get it.
You know it.
She would beat anybody in all time. Nobody in the history of Survivor has managed the social game as well as she.
She drips charm. Everyone loves her. You totally understand it. How the fuck, then, is she worried about not having connections? She says in this episode, like, hey, Jeremy's my only connection. Well, where the fuck is your social game then that you don't have anybody else you can talk to or turn to? You know, Kim is just now in this episode trying to loop you into a plan. The first time I recall seeing Michele get looped into a plan in fucking eons. Who the hell is Michele working this magical social game upon? Because as far as we're aware, it's Jeremy. And
meanwhile,
that's it.
Tony is a knuckle-dragging oaf who just bumbles his way through the game. Unlike the refined, tastes of Michele. Tony, who, has people left and right telling him what's going on. Tony, who has every option in the world to play. Tony, who is the one who saved Jeremy by asking people to not vote for him. He's got no social game, but Michele is so social that she couldn't dare even say, hey, how about not Jeremy? I get it. I wanted to vote out Tony too. Good move. She should. But I would rather not vote out Jeremy. Could we discuss this further? No, she can't do that. No, she is just too social to be able to do that. Here is how social Michele has been this season. The person who she gave a potential idol to couldn't be bothered to tell her how he was voting.
I was wondering that too. Obviously, we didn't get to see it. But, did he maybe want to... it could have happened and we didn't see. But maybe just clue her in case a stray vote went anywhere else. That he might be like, hey, listen, Michele, so I'm going to play this thing. And, just in case a stray vote is anywhere else, not that they're doing a vote split, but if they were, I don't want my one vote to tie with somebody else's one vote and then I don't get my target. So you and I vote together. Nope. Jeremy was just going to ride with the one vote and hope that he saved himself.
Don't forget it, once Jeremy, at some point, I'm guessing before Tribal Council starts, he is given the idea that there's enough votes to take out Kim. He has to participate. And even in that process, he doesn't go to Michele either to be like, hey, we can do this. If you just work with me, we can do this. And then he won't need, Ben or Nick. Or even, hey, partner, I don't want to leave you hanging again on another vote. The third time this season that you'd be left hanging. So just vote for Kim. That's the way it's going down. Nope. None of that happened. Yet, wow, what an impressive move by Michele. That she lost and people were still like, no, it's the right move. She has to vote the way people tell her to. What more could she possibly do? She is not, of course, somebody who has agency and thus could, decide things for herself and also try to get other people to decide with her. She couldn't possibly say, go talk to Nick and be like, hey, do we really want to vote out Jeremy? No. All she can do is give away the thing that she paid all her money for. That's it. That's all she could do and hope for the best. That's what brilliance is.
We saw her in a scene with, I mentioned it earlier, Denise and Nick and Michele. They're all sitting there talking about hey, maybe us for a final three. Okay, you've clearly talked to them about it. Why not go to them and say, hey, maybe the move here is Kim? Because I want to work to keep Jeremy safe. I'm not going to tell you that. But, guys, the move here is Kim because we can't take out Tony and we got to take out big targets. You guys
The move here is Sarah. How about that? If she's so fucking smart at Survivor.
Anything.
How about that?
Why is it just oh, well, I guess the move is Jeremy, so I'm going to vote with you guys. Take the fucking shot. Just try. Try and fail. I would respect it so much more because at least you tried.
Yeah, and I should clarify, if she wants the move to be Jeremy, That's fine. That's great. But we know she doesn't because she gives him a potential idol. Yeah, and what you're getting at is like, even before I knew the result of this episode, so even before I had the results that told me, wow, she failed in every possible way she could fail in what she was doing. So it would be foolish to go on the internet and praise her for that. And to some people's credit, they're doing it live. They don't know the result either. But even before I knew the result, just the passivity of her in the scenes when she's explaining her options is everything I hate about her game and games like it. The fact that she's like, I don't want this to happen, so I'm going to give Jeremy your idol because I can't do anything about it. No, you can. You're out there playing Survivor. You're one of the 20 winners brought out for season 40. You can do things. And you want to know why I know that? Because someone fucking did this goddamn episode.
Also,
so it's a possible thing.
Also, there are only 8 people left. So you are 1/8 of the voting population in this group. If Jeremy is your closest ally, theoretically he would vote with you. You now control 1/4 of all the votes left in the game.
All you gotta do is start to examine who else could benefit. And, one way to think about it is, what Ben did. Sell out Kim is a way you could get about this. There's so many ways to do it. But no, all she can think to do is, I need to be another useless vote as part of this vote. And what's like, some way I almost get it, because like one of the few strategic things she did in Go Wrong was throw a meaningless vote on her closest ally in Julia. And frankly, that might have even worked for her. That might have been enough to tell people that season that like, oh, we can work with Michele. She's willing to work with us, even if it means voting out her friend. It's not like that now. I don't think people care. I don't think they didn't care when she threw a meaningless vote on Tyson. So she already has that data point, so that maybe she could be like, it doesn't really benefit me at all to try to vote out somebody. And yeah, I totally get why she doesn't want Jeremy to leave. He is the only person looking to work with her. When she was whining at the start of the episode about how like she was upset at Tony and she's tired of nobody telling her where the vote was, I'm like, well, they told you last night you voted with Tony. What are you talking about? Why are you saying you got to team up with Kim? She was the one who didn't tell you which way the vote was going to go. And it's just like this passivity that like, it's where I will never be able to square with the Michele stance. Even if it wins for her. And I don't think it will this season, but I'm leaving the possibility. I just can't stand that out of like people I'm watching compete in a game. I have just so much more respect for someone like Kim who is willing to put themselves out there to try to win rather than someone like Michele who is just trying her best not to lose.
And you know what? I'm now going to count a win for my argument way back in David versus Goliath, where I said Gabby was taking the home run shot rather than just trying to go along vote by vote.
You can take the win, but I'm not giving it to you. You don't have to do stupid things to win. No.
No more arguments. I have won that argument several years later.
You will never win that argument.
So
I am going to make a move where I will move. I'll be voted out next week. Is not any smarter than not taking a move. There is things like intelligent moves. And that wasn't her only opportunity. But it's really stupid to argue that now. But yeah, I just want to note, like, for the people that are still like Michele Stan, she's doing so amazing. This is at least the third, probably the fourth time this season that Michele had no fucking clue what the vote was going to be. Social God.
And not only that, but is she not realizing that there seems to be some fluidity as to the voting blocks? Like, just because a vote went one way this episode does not mean that that same group will be voting together in the next episode. So, trying to align with the group that's voting out Jeremy by being like, see, I voted with you. They won't fucking care because you know what? In the next vote, maybe they don't need you again. They're not looking at your voting history. They're looking at who has similar interests as me in this game. Whose game would benefit from doing this move that I want to attempt? If you are that person, probably you will be approached.
And again, like, if her motivation is, yeah, no, this is a great, like, final 3 potential for me. It's one of the best she could hope for. Then that's fine. But we know her motivation is to not lose Jeremy because she gave him her idol. Maybe. So we know she wants Jeremy to stay. She's just unwilling to do anything, active to do it. She's unwilling to stick her neck out to do it. She was committed to do is give away this thing that could have value to her or not. But, to let anybody know, to get any credit for the move at all. No, she's not going to do that. And that's what's great thing is she took the path of least resistance and still lost. Like, it still didn't even fucking work. So, yeah, do things. Do things and win. Do things and lose. But fucking do things. And, that's why. Like, it's just never going to square with me. And I know people will create all the other reasons why, I hate this player. No, it's that. It's the unwillingness to do things in a competition. And, I'm an idiot or understanding. We'll see. We'll see who's going to succeed this season or not. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not. So yeah, no, it was just frustrating. Just like her speech of, I really don't want to do this, but what else can I do? Basically. And it's just like, oh, fuck. That was just my reaction. Before, frankly, at that moment, I thought that Jeremy was going to go home unless he won the coin flip. And it was just, I was still like, that's so lame. It's just, I don't think you're winning that way.
All right, let's move on to talking about someone else. Maybe let's talk about Jeremy. Shit, we're on the subject.
Sure.
Second week in a row of Jeremy being saved by Tony. And like I said this earlier in the episode, I think that Tony now sees the appeal of having Jeremy around and worked really hard this week to make sure that he stayed around.
Yeah, and that's great for Tony. I think it's good short term for Jeremy. It's been a while since something went Jeremy's way, other than not going home. I guess in those senses, it's gone really well for him. And it's tough to see a path where it will go his way, particularly when his number one ally is somebody unwilling to do anything. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough to see that, but he's a big target. It's tough. He's not controlling his threat level. He really should have not had as many children or many muscles, I guess.
Well, it's funny because he is a big target, I think, based on rep, which same problem that Kim had. At the same time, I don't think Jeremy's played an exceptionally great game this time around. And if I was to compare it to Cambodia, he is the fishback to Tony's Jeremy now, and that didn't work out well for the fishback in that scenario. So it's not looking great for him. He has been lucky enough to survive in advance, which is useful, but at the same time, I haven't been super impressed with Jeremy's game this season.
I mean, honestly, what could be the big difference is he went to tribal council more often in the pre-merge. And I know that, there are people who think you should just go a lot and intentionally go, but any potential coalitions he was going to have kind of fell apart, and thus he was down numbers. Now, that's not to absolve him of everything. If he was able to work it a little better, he would have had Wendell. And he recognized that he needed a Wendell. But ultimately, why he has less room to move than, say, does Tony, is Tony didn't lose as many potential allies before Jeremy did, is a big part of it.
Well, I mean, I think that also might be because Tony was open to having more allies. I think, Jeremy fixated on some, and Tony was like, I will take the pieces that come my way.
What doors did Jeremy close, though?
Okay, fair enough. I think early on, after the Natalie vote, he seemed pretty shut down. To be fair, he did later on work with some groups that had gone against him, or I assume Natalie was within his interests in that early vote. So he did work with some people then, but, by the time we got to the merge-ish, I don't feel like he had worked to establish relationships with a lot of other people.
I mean, he was in an alliance with Ben of, we're all the big dogs, we're the lions, and then all of a sudden he wasn't. And, we haven't gotten that story, and I almost wonder if Jeremy himself is what happened? Wasn't this supposed to be the Lions Alliance, and all of a sudden they're moving against him, and now Ben won't talk to him. And, I'm at the point now, and I know people will, consider this bias and, homerism or whatever, to suggest that if you've turned Ben off in this game, the problem might not be you.
Yes.
I know that a lot of people did a lot of heavy lifting, pointless lifting, as we all know, to try and convince me that this was a huge glaring flaw of one particular player in the pre-merge, that, it's his fault that Ben didn't want to work with him. But I'm starting to feel like maybe not. Maybe it's more of a Ben thing than it is a Jeremy thing, or was it an Adam thing, or that other guy thing.
Yeah. When you start to hear it from multiple people, over multiple seasons, by the way, it's not that this is a season 40 first. Like, Ben had previously been well liked by everybody. And suddenly in season 40, people are having some difficulties with Ben. There's kind of a pattern here that this might just be how Ben operates.
Yeah. But look, Jeremy tried to save Wendell. I think he made the right decision in giving that up once the tides were turning. Maybe, though, and we talked about it at the time, maybe he tried too hard, and that's what kind of tumbled it all down. It's totally possible. I'll buy that as a plausibility explanation. But then, he formed this grand coalition of, top threat levels, got rid of an Adam, and then just, no, they were like, okay, that's good. Now it's time to go.
Out.
Yeah, and at that point, what's he going to do? The target was him. He did what he needed to do. He left, and after that, yeah. It's tough. It's tough once people recognize the truth of the matter of you being the biggest target. Now, somebody like Tony was able to fool them longer. But yeah, it's it has not been going well, but this is what happens when people recognize that you're probably going to beat them in the end.
And speaking of people who might beat you in the end, I've been wanting to talk about Sarah for a very long time, because Sarah, we saw her at the start of the episode. She is fucking livid, takes Tony out, reams his ass out. Like, how dare you? You are fucking dead to me. If this ever comes back to bite me, don't talk to me ever again. Blah, blah, blah. Big blow up fight with Tony. And Tony, of course, being Tony, is like, it's a game. Fucking fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. We'll take care of it. I'm good with you. The things Tony always says. Sarah was not having it, at least in that moment. But clearly, in the intervening days, she's back with she's Tony's number one and vice versa. And it's fascinating to watch, because I think she really is willing to take Tony to the end, and vice versa. And I think it's because, obviously Tony thinks he beats her. I think she thinks that she can beat him. And I don't know that she's wrong. Although right now I'd probably give him a slight edge. But Sarah's really fucking good. And it's fascinating to watch those two types of games, Tony's and Sarah's, and seeing which holds a greater appeal to a jury of all the winners.
Yeah, no, the last two people to leave the game gave her fire tokens, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Kim didn't want to move against her because she thought she could work with Sarah. Sarah clearly is the actual social queen of this season. The people that you wouldn't think that Sarah would have bonds with, she has formed some very tight bonds with.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting if it does end up being them in the finals, because that's what everybody's going to say. It's this is social versus strategy. And it's again, Sarah is a superlative social player. But I think she's also really good at strategy.
Agreed.
It's just people will overlook the work that Tony's put in that. Much like how people really wanted to simplify Wendell versus Dom. When it's Wendell was slightly more likable, and maybe Dom was slightly more strategic, but they were about the same, as evidenced by their vote totals. I really liked the way she handled that. The anger was there, and I think she knows she has a level of comfort with Tony that she can be angry like that. I think she also put a bit of the fear of God in him with her, the way she came back at him. It was okay, fine, I will go with you, but if this bounces back on me, that's it, we're done. Real life. And I think Tony's maybe I won't flip on her so quickly.
Well, and I think part of it too is that's again, Sarah's really fucking good at reading people. And I think that she knows this is the way to talk to Tony. And I think it got through to him. I think she knows how to talk to various different people who aren't like her. Again, she's really good at the actual social game. Like, she can talk to various people, different backgrounds, form relationships with them. And no, like we saw earlier in the season, she was like best buddies with Tyson. She somehow became good friends with Sophie, the nerd that you wouldn't think has anything in common with her. She's besties with Tony all season long. Kim wants to work with her. Like, she clearly is a person that everybody wants to go to and feels comfortable with. And she does have the strategic chops as well. I'd put Tony slightly higher than hers. Sarah's social is slightly higher than Tony's. But again, it's like one's a 9, one's a 10. The other one's got a 9 and a 10 in the other spots. Like, they're both really fucking good, well-rounded players.
Yeah, because her going back to Tony isn't a sign of weakness, isn't a sign of like her being like, somebody else is believing Tony is going to get fooled by Tony. And I'm not just saying that as a hyper Tony partisan. It's the right move for her. Like, we saw, Kim, again, one of the greatest players of all time, identify. It's like, it's those two. We got to worry about those two. So she knows that, as dangerous a player as Tony can be, right now their interests align. She needs him and he needs her. And I wouldn't put it past her that she is also working on plans that won't involve needing Tony. But right now it did. So it was time to work together. And, it wasn't easy trusting him, but it was the right call. At the end of that tribal council, not only had he not turned on her, he was willing to save her, even unnecessarily. So, credit for her.
Yeah, and I think one of the other interesting things is that she, in that argument, whether she chooses to execute it or not, she laid the groundwork for if she moves against him later, she can be like, you know what, fucking Tony, I did it as long as I could. You bit me in the ass. This had to happen. Tony's going to respect her for it. Like, if for some reason she votes him out and she's in final tribal council, he's given her his vote.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think she is the player best positioned to take Tony out right now.
Yeah, and not only
whether
that,
or not she does, we'll see. It might not ever be in her best interest,
right.
But I think she's the player that could best do it.
And if she gets to the end with Tony, I am fascinated to see how the vote breakdown goes, regardless of who the third is, because I don't know that any third from the players currently left in the game presents too big of an option.
I suppose if it's Jeremy, but there's no world where those three go to the final three.
Exactly. And even then, I feel like, as much as people might respect Jeremy, again, it's, who played the best game? You're not going to put Jeremy's game ahead of Sarah or Tony, at least at this point, from what we've seen.
Yeah. And of course, the other big threat is player who's not inactive.
That's
right now.
why I said of the players left in the game.
Yeah. Hey, what the hell's Ben's problem?
Fucking hell, man. It was fascinating to watch the man, totally shut down on Jeremy. And Jeremy's just calmly approaching him hey, can we just talk about this, man? I'm not, I get that there's something wrong, but can we talk about it? And Ben just not fucking hearing it. So
no, I don't want to.
Yeah. What the hell, man?
Yeah, I liked it when last week when Jeremy's and you know who the biggest threat will be is, and then Ben was yeah, you. No, good, you're right. That's fine. But just his complete unwillingness to engage in a game where you're supposed to engage. That's how the game works. It is a game where you need people to work together to get rid of people that aren't you. And now he just doesn't want to do that. And, I posited this in comments, but not everybody reads all of the hundreds of comments. I like to think that they scan them for mine, but it's tough. There's 5 purple icons. It's tough. Maybe you might miss 1 or 2. I think Ben is just somebody who only knows how to play this game oppositionally, confrontationally. If I am trying to move against you, I have to not like you in order to do it. Like it's only like it's a versus, it's a war. It can't just be, hey man, we're just playing a game, and I respect you and I want to take you out. That's just not the way he rolls. So 2 weeks ago he geared up to get rid of Jeremy because Jeremy is a threatening player. He's well liked, he's well rounded, he's got a million kids. I like how like the worry is like the 2 extra kids Jeremy has buys him so many more votes than the 2 kids Ben has. It's like 2, whatever. That's nothing.
Sympathy kids.
He's a firefighter. I'm a fucking soldier. Like again, it's just volume. He's beating him on volume. So he geared up that he was going to take Jeremy out, and then it's just like he doesn't know how to then like stand down from that matter and be like, okay, well, it didn't happen. Like he was mad at Jeremy for Jeremy not allowing him the opportunity to vote out Jeremy, and that's it. And we saw that, once he decided he didn't want to, that's it. Boston Robinson made a fool of me one too many times. He wasn't, that actually, his relationship with Rob was the best that people have had, because like he was able to talk to Bob and say, oh no, it's us. We're definitely going to do that. And I'll agree to this, buddy system thing. Whereas at Adam, once he realized he was going to vote out Adam if they had gone to a tribal in the swamp, he never wanted to talk to Adam again. Adam would be like, hey, so we can talk about, no. And this isn't just this season. That's how he was before. It's like, Cole ate too much food. That fucker is dead to me forever. And that's just like, I think once he decides he needs to move on somebody, they're the bad guy.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, Kim was not able to adapt her game. Ben just eternally cannot adapt his game. Once he has committed to a path, he is dead set upon it and cannot be shifted. Although, to his credit, like, he clearly wanted to vote out Jeremy, but Tony did at least make him realize, like, no. Let's put a pause on that. You don't have to talk to Jeremy. You don't have to be friends with him again. Keep that hatred within you that you built up for voting him out the first time. We'll use it again at the next vote.
And actually, like, of what we saw of that conversation reveals again, like, some of the strengths of Tony's social game. And some of the Tony's social game, I think, is just like, he's just so animated when he talks to you that it probably is hard to like hate the guy, right? Like no, but can we just talk? I'll give you a fire token, whatever. Let's just talk. Oh no, I know you don't like Jeremy, but what if we do this? Oh no, it's okay, it's cool. But how about if we still do it? And like he knew to like approach with caution. He knew that Ben didn't want to do this, and somehow, some way, was able to win him over. And I liked seeing how Tony was able to approach Ben with this. Obviously, he is given the ability to approach Ben in a way that Jeremy isn't, because Ben is like, no, don't talk to me. And again, like, I think it's credit to Jeremy that, like, even later in the episode, even though after it had clearly been established that Ben is a child and won't talk to him, he still tried again. He still tried to do active things to save himself in the game rather than just, hey, somebody tell me where to vote. Because, he's not as good as social player as other people, apparently.
Also, if Ben's being a child, Jeremy has a lot of experience. He has 4.
That's right. I mean, 4 last we saw. There could be 2 more since then. I'm not sure how that works, the science behind it, but they seem to be multiplying. Hey, do we need to have a new take on the tribal whispering that, like, is all the rage in the...
I know a lot of people were like, oh, fucking again. I don't know. I'm not that bent out of shape about it. Like, we got more subtitling this time, which was nice. I mean, I think the reason we got the subtitling was not because of complaints, but because, like, this was crucial to the episode and knowing where the strategy was taking place. Like, I think the idea with the previous whispering not being subtitled was you were supposed to get the sense that this was chaotic, it could move, it was really live and active. And who knows where it's going to go. This time, I think it was more just reaffirming votes and like, oh, we're checking in. You're still good, right? We're still doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this. And seeing the people move around to the different groups that they were going to have their conversations with. It was just sort of letting us in on what's taking place there.
Yeah, I thought the subtitling was a good innovation because I thought that the most logical argument against it was that we are suddenly not privy to information when we are supposed to be privy to whatever the editors, deign to show us. No, I would posit the idea that they might have just made it up. Like, again, I don't know if they actually got the enough audio to really know what they were saying, but fuck it, yeah, sure, make it up. Making up things people are saying is not like a first time thing in Survivor. They will patch together sound from like 5 different days to string together a sentence. So, yeah, sure, do that. But I guess people are getting tired of it. It certainly isn't exciting anymore. It's like, oh, fuck, we're doing this again. But I don't know. I still don't. I'm not deeply offended by it. There was one take I saw that makes me think that this isn't good. Is that the back row has so much more of an advantage than the front row.
Yeah,
The whispering at tribal, and back row tends to be taller.
And taller people tend to be
male.
The men. Yeah, and that was Julie from Edge of Extinction who had that take. And, she's right. I don't know that it's like that at every tribal council. But at the same time, this is just one of those, like, very small, not noticed disadvantages that happen with the women, like, or whatever subgroup it might be. Like, there's always these tiny, almost imperceptible advantage, sometimes pretty perceptible advantages for the men in this game. And this is another one of those.
Yeah, and, it's worth examining. And again, like, enough people are complaining about, well, although, is it really that many? Or is this like the COVID protests of Survivor fandom?
Where there's 15 weirdos standing on a Capitol steps with AR-15s?
Yeah. I am at the point, like, it's pointless to keep complaining about it this season. It would be radically unfair if suddenly it's like, nah, I let all these other people, potentially affect the outcome and thus put these people over there, but no more. Like that, again, as I said, imagine if Probst had told Sophie she's not allowed to do what she was trying to do. I imagine people wouldn't have been like, yes, Probst, go ahead to step in.
Way to put her in her place.
Yeah, not the people we read anyway. But no, it's worth, like, maybe it's worth not doing it. I didn't get some people being upset that, like, Tony was able to feint playing the idol and then not, and same with Jeremy. It's like, what? I think sometimes people just really love rules. I think some fans are just like, where are the rules? I need clearly defined rules. This is a game, right, isn't it? Whereas I think some people prefer guidelines. And that's what it is. In Survivor, the players, it's a guideline. And after that, see what you can get away with. Because, like, the very foundation of this game was you don't tell anybody how you're voting, and you vote. And they, assumed it would be that people who were providing less value would go home every week until the ultimate survivor was crowned, thus the best. And, right away, people were like, no, we're going to collaborate on our votes and play this game differently. And it works better that way. It works better when it's guidelines and people who are trying to win say, hey, let's see how much I can get away with. And yeah, sometimes the Detroit Pistons foul Michael Jordan a lot. And I'm sure it pisses a lot of people off. But, they still had 2 championships.
Who's the Michael Jordan of Survivor?
Oh God, I don't know the context of that quote. I don't even know if it was real. Sometimes my Twitter feed does the annoying thing where they like sort my best and I don't realize it until something like that crosses the point. It's like, oh God, I'm not viewing latest. But I swear to fucking God, somebody wrote, somebody called Michele the Michael Jordan of Survivor, and I agree. And I'm like, is it a different Michael Jordan? Because you're not talking about the basketball one, right? Like, you're not even talking about the Wizards version of it. Is it Michael Jordan, the executive of the Charlotte Bobcats, who we're talking about?
Do any of you who make these claims watch basketball?
It was laughable, but it's one of those things after a while, it's like, man, I really read somebody call Michele the Michael Jordan survivor. That's when takes just died at that moment.
There's a lot of pressure on Survivor podcaster and blogger types to get a good take, to get your angle out there. Sometimes I think people they might just go a little too far with their takes. And
again, maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was a joke. It has to have been a joke, right? It has to be.
Whatever context you put that in. I don't know. I don't even know how that works as a joke.
Yeah. I think it could work if you actually have no idea who Michael Jordan is.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
what I'm saying.
Are we talking about Michael Jordan Jr.? His son who was never able to live up to the name?
Could be. All right. Anyway,
I feel like you're selling Michelle short.
Back to the episode, though. One thing that we did not talk about is Edge of Extinction. I can't believe we didn't talk about the very exciting Edge of Extinction segment, wherein we got to witness some more grueling physical labor in exchange for a token, actual, literal token. Isn't this what you tune into this show for?
Well, I mean, obviously I only tune in for Rob, and we'll get there. I think both this and the other grueling challenge was also the show being like, let's get some calories into these people. I mean, now the last one was about getting firewood, which, can be used for that and warmth. But, at the end of the day, they had a big pile of coconuts they could eat. Okay. There's a thing. But, man, so inspirational.
And I'm not one who generally harps on fairness a whole lot. And, of course, I'm not a big Adam fan. But at the same time, like, these types of challenges are really shitty for someone like Adam. Like, carrying logs and coconuts and running up mountains and shit. Like, that type of thing very much favors a Natalie-like person. The physically fit, active types. Even Boston.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about that. Like, wow. Competitions sometimes favor people who are good and competitive.
I'm saying
some other competitions favor people who are light. Man, I don't give a shit that Adam can't compete on this level. Walk around and find wine bottles then. Like whatever.
I'm saying
some competitions, people who aren't good at them aren't going to win.
I'm saying specifically, Survivor of late in challenges tends to have a variety of challenges within which all types of people could succeed. It's just weird to then go to Edge of Extinction and have the types of challenges where it's like, okay, the little pissant Adam types, you're not doing anything here. You're not getting tokens.
Yeah, this is one, man. Harvard won one for remembering that, Aubrey found an idol one way. Like, that couldn't have been more tailor-made for an Adam type. So, I don't give a shit about that. What I don't like is, stop trying to kill my Survivor Legends for tokens show.
Yeah, I made the joke on Twitter that Survivor has realized that, the thing that really kicks up the drama in a TV show is the death of a main character. So they're working towards it.
In some ways I get it. Like, people were really into that for some shows. But I think we're really stepping on the lead. And why lead? I mean, not just for this segment, for the entire episode. The heroism of Boston Rob. What fake hustle bullshit is that?
I love that, we talked about earlier, Michele, just fucking try, do it, take the shot, whatever. Boston Rob, why are you fucking trying? It's done. You lost.
Yeah, you try, and then you fall, and then go sit the fuck down.
This is the time to stop trying.
No. And look, man, I get it in some ways, and this is how I get it, not in the way that he laid out. One of the things I like about Boston Rob is that he is unabashedly a professional reality show contestant.
Yes. This was all about the screen time.
It was! He knew that if he gave them this, he would get. And especially, he's in a position to know they'll give as long as I, myself, Boston Rob Mariano, give. And he found a way to make a segment where he was, well behind about him. And all he needed to do was go get another coconut or two. So bravo. It's hokey, and it's, of course, the exact sort of thing that people who dislike Rob will just really hate. For me, I gotta respect that hustle. The fake hustle of going out there and getting them, I don't respect that at all. That's like shooting the ball after the time has expired so you don't ruin your field goal percentage type fake hustle. But, the hustle of, adding to the legend of Rob Mariano so that you can turn around and, sell cameo sessions at a higher rate. It's hokey, but fuck, man, know your value and get paid.
Hey, by the way, you got a birthday present coming up soon. Just throwing that out there.
Anniversary too. If people want to save up, don't bother buying our t-shirts. Just, let me talk to a guy about how much I love him. Hey, so what do we want to happen next week?
So next
2 weeks. We only got 2 weeks left of this show.
And
next week we got 2 hours.
Which is wild. We got 2 hours. Like, I don't know exactly what's going down in the 2 hours. I don't know if we're getting, like, an edge person back. Are we getting 2 boots? Like, what the fuck is happening? Do you know?
No.
It's a mystery.
I bet Boston Rob goes and gets a few more coconuts.
Obviously, we're going to, I mean, 2 hours. There
will be time.
You're primed for a Boston Rob scene in there. Yeah, so I don't even know. Are we getting 2 boots? It's like, I would imagine, because the finale is the final week, they're setting us up for a 6-person finale. That seems to be the going number for a finale these days. So I'm guessing we vote out 2 and then get an edge person back is my guess. I don't fucking know. But I'm guessing, we're going to end the episode on the edge person coming back into the game. And who that will be, fucking shrug. No idea.
I still think that they'll start the finale with that, but who knows? And like, we could lose 2 people, lose the 7, lose the 6, and then start the finale with getting another 6 back. Yeah, I don't know. Some people, maybe it's just 1 boot, but it's just so packed an episode that they made it 2. And that could be cool. That's possible. I think it's 2 people will be leaving somehow, some way, because there's a lot of real estate to get around. They have to service a jury of fucking 16 people. So, I mean, now they don't all have to get up and have a speech. And if Danny doesn't ask any questions, I'll be fine with it. But yeah, like the finale is going to have a lot. Now, luckily, hopefully they'll schedule it in a way that like the Zoom reunion is about 10 minutes long, if that. But still a lot of time. Here's what I'm hoping happens next week. A very specific thing. A few weeks ago, when we were talking about what would be the funniest way for Michele to fail with this coin, I said that going home with it in her bag, because I lacked imagination. That won't happen. I'm pretty like 80% sure 7 is the last time that advantage can be played. The funniest thing that could happen is that now it's time to move against Jeremy, and just like they did 2 weeks ago, they vote split, because I think 5 against Jeremy is easier to do than 5 against Tony. And Jeremy keeps the coin, flips it. It works. He is immune, and Michele goes home as a result of her giving it away to somebody that she was going to vote for. It really should be noted that this is the second time this season that somebody tried to vote for somebody they were also giving a potential idol to, and it failed both times.
That would be pretty entertaining. Yeah, I mean, my only real hope is that, as I said, my main rooting interest is Tony, so I just want to watch the fucking wild Tony train. I just want to keep going on this ride, see where it takes us. I'd like Denise to stick around if that's possible. But again, as long as Tony is here, taking people out in entertaining ways, I'll be fine.
Yeah, before I thought of the hilarious Michele going home as a result of her own coin, that could be nothing and it could be something. It'd be awesome if Ben gets back from Tribal Council, just pissed at Tony for somehow manipulating him into not voting out Jeremy, to the degree that Tony's like, I got to get rid of Ben now. That would be great.
It would be. And
I got to do it before he plays his idol. I know he has an idol. I got to blindside him. So now's the time.
And it would,
Jeremy, let's do it.
It would not surprise me in the least if that's Tony's move. If he's like, all right, Ben, we're finally going to get Jeremy. I'm so sorry that we made you wait. Now we're going to do it. And then he actually turns everybody against Ben instead.
Yeah, no, it's great Tony logic. So I'm here for that. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, my motivation is, Tony continuing to do awesome things, even though he's got 0 chance to win this game. All right. Is that all for this week?
Sure. Website is purplerockpodcast.com. Twitter is purplerockpod. Purple Rock John, Purple Rock Andy, blah, blah, blah. You know the rest.
Yeah, so on our website, the top 40 influential list will continue. And next week, you'll be getting the 29th, 32nd, and 33rd players on our list we give up.
That's how chronological order works.
All right, let's play some music.
Now here's a little story I got to tell about a gangsta-ass bitch that know so well. It started way back in history with Little Kim, Junior Mafia, and B.I.G.